The rain soaked through 8-year-old Tommy's thin jacket as he scrubbed the businessman's expensive shoes, his small hands red from the cold and his stomach aching from another missed meal. His mother's words echoed in his mind with each stroke. Of the brush, we do honest work, mijo, no matter how hard things get. But she didn't know that her son had started shining shoes outside the train station after school to help pay for her cancer medications. The stranger's Italian leather shoes were the finest Tommy had ever touched, worth more than their entire month's rent. But the boy couldn't see the man's face through the newspaper he was reading. As Tommy worked, the stranger's hands began to shake, the newspaper trembling as he recognized the gentle humming, the same lullaby he had sung to his son every night before disappearing 5 years ago. But what devastating secret would explain why a successful father had abandoned his family only to return as a stranger in disguise? Subscribe to Soulful Stories for more heart-touching tales of love, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Tommy's world had shrunk to the size of their one-bedroom apartment in the month since his mother's diagnosis. The space that had once felt cozy now seemed cramped with medical supplies, pill bottles lined up on the kitchen counter, appointment reminders stuck to the refrigerator, the wheelchair folded in the corner for bad days. But it was still home, filled with the scent of his mother's cooking when she had the strength and the sound of her gentle humming on good days. Maria Rodriguez tried to hide her pain from her son, but Tommy saw everything. He noticed how she winced when reaching for dishes, how she rested more frequently between chores, how the light in her eyes dimmed each time she opened another medical bill. At night, he heard her crying softly in her room, probably thinking he was asleep. The shoe-shining kit had been his grandfather's, discovered in a box of old belongings. Tommy had watched YouTube videos to learn the proper technique, practicing on his own worn sneakers until his hands moved with confidence. His mother thought he spent his after-school hours at the library studying. In a way, he was studying, learning, the art of survival one shine shoe at a time. "Mijo," his mother called from her bed one morning, her voice weaker than usual. "You're growing up so fast, too fast." Tommy quickly hid the money he'd earned the day before in his sock drawer. "I'm okay, Mama, just doing my homework." "Your father," she started, then stopped, the way she always did when memories became too painful. "He would be proud of how responsible you've become." The mention of his father made Tommy's hands clench. He remembered fragments of the man who had abandoned them, strong hands lifting him onto broad shoulders, the scent of cologne and leather, that special lullaby sung every night. But mostly, he remembered the morning they woke up to find him gone. No note, no explanation, just empty drawers and his mother's broken sobs. School had become a blur of exhaustion. Tommy struggled to keep his eyes open during classes, his mind constantly calculating how many shoes he needed to shine to help with next month's rent. His teacher, Ms. Thompson, had noticed his declining grades and frequent yawns. "Is everything all right at home, Tommy?" she asked one afternoon, holding him back after class. "Yes, ma'am," he replied automatically, the lie bitter on his tongue. "Just staying up late studying." Her concerned eyes reminded him of his mother's, making the deception harder. But he couldn't risk anyone discovering his secret work. Child Services had already visited once when his mother first got sick. The fear of being separated from her haunted his nightmares. The train station had become his unofficial workplace. He learned the patterns of the commuters, which ones might need a shine, which ones might tip well, which ones to avoid. The regulars knew him now, some even asking about his mother, though he kept those conversations vague. "Such a hard-working young man," they'd say, dropping extra dollars in his box. Their kindness helped, but it wasn't enough. The medical bills kept coming, each one larger than the last. At home, Tommy had become expert at managing their precarious situation. He learned to stretch groceries, to help his mother with her medications, to maintain their facade of coping. But each day brought new challenges, new fears, new reminders of how close they were to losing everything. "Tell me about him," Tommy sometimes asked on good evenings, when his mother's pain was managed and they could pretend life was normal. About Papa. Maria's eyes would grow distant looking at the family photo she kept by her bed, the last one taken before everything changed. "He loved you so much, Tommy. Every night that special lullaby." Her voice would trail off, lost in memories of happier times. The lullaby remained Tommy's strongest connection to his father. He hummed it while he worked, the melody a comfort. In hard moments, though, he'd never admit how much he missed the man who'd left them. It was easier to focus on anger than pain, but survival left little room for emotions. Each morning brought the same routine: help his mother with breakfast, rush to school, then race to the train station for his secret work. The weight of adult responsibilities pressed down on young shoulders, forcing him to grow up too fast, to learn lessons no child should face alone. Still, Tommy held on to hope. Hope that his mother would get better, that they'd find a way through their financial crisis, that somehow their broken family might heal. But hope, he was learning, came with a price, and that price was getting harder to pay with each passing day. James Rodriguez gripped the newspaper with trembling hands, his son's gentle humming piercing straight through the wall he'd built around his heart. 5 years of forced separation, of watching from shadows, of fighting to keep them safe from a distance, all undone by a simple childhood lullaby, the same one his own father had sung to him, passed down through generations of Rodriguez men. Behind the newspaper's shield, his eyes burned with unshed tears. Tommy had grown so much, yet James could still see traces of the toddler who used to run to him with arms wide open. Now those small hands worked with a determination no child should need, each careful stroke of the brush a testament to burdens too heavy for young shoulders. "All finished, sir," Tommy said, his voice carrying echoes of the baby's laughter James remembered so well. James lowered the paper slightly, careful to keep his face obscured. "How much?" $5, sir, but I did extra polish, so maybe 7? The hesitation in Tommy's voice spoke volumes about their desperation. 20, James replied, handing over the bill. He wanted to give more, to empty his wallet, to sweep his son into his arms and explain everything. But he couldn't, not yet. Maybe not ever. The truth he carried was a poison that could destroy what little peace his family had found. The criminal organization he'd crossed paths with 5 years ago, the one whose corruption he'd discovered while working as their accountant, had made their threats crystal clear. His family's safety for his silence and absence. Walking away had killed something inside him, but watching Tommy and Maria from afar had been an exquisite torture he'd endured to keep them alive. He'd created a new identity, built a new fortune, all while maintaining the web of protection around them. Anonymous deposits to their bank account that looked like insurance payments, careful monitoring of the men who'd threatened them, strategic. Donations to Maria's hospital to ensure she received the best care. But cancer had changed everything. When his sources told him about Maria's diagnosis, the careful distance he'd maintained began to crack. He'd started taking the train instead of his usual private car, choosing times when he knew Tommy would be working, allowing himself these small moments of connection. "Thank you, sir," Tommy said, carefully tucking the 20 into his shoe shining. "Kit, will I see you tomorrow?" The hope in his son's voice made James's chest ache. "Perhaps," he managed, his own voice carefully disguised. "You do good work, son." The word slipped out before he could catch it, and he saw Tommy freeze momentarily, but the boy's need to maintain his customer base overrode any suspicion. "Thank you, sir. I try my best." James watched through the paper as Tommy packed up his supplies, noting how organized he was, how careful with each brush and tin of polish. Maria had raised him well, despite everything. Or perhaps because of everything, his phone buzzed, a message from his security team. They monitored the organization that had forced his departure, watching for any sign that his careful choreography of absence had been compromised. So far, his enemies believed him thoroughly cowed, living abroad, no threat to their operations. The fortune he'd built in the intervening years remained carefully hidden under layers of shell companies and aliases. But things were changing. His investigators had recently uncovered evidence that could finally bring down the organization. The case was building slowly, carefully, each piece of documentation secured beyond doubt. When it broke, it would shake the foundations of the city's financial world. More importantly, it would free his family from the shadow of threat. Until then, these stolen moments were all he had, watching his son work, listening to that haunting lullaby, aching with every glimpse of the man Tommy was becoming too quickly. The businessman's disguise he wore felt like a betrayal, another lie atop the mountain of necessary deceptions. The train station's afternoon crowd surged around them, a river of humanity unknowingly witnessing this fractured family moment. James saw how some people looked past Tommy as if he were invisible, while others offered kind smiles that didn't quite reach their wallets. His son deserved so much more than this. "Be safe," he whispered, too softly for Tommy to hear, as the boy shouldered his kit and headed toward the station's exit. James remained seated, maintaining his cover, until Tommy disappeared into the crowd. Only then did he lower the newspaper, his composed facade cracking just enough to let one tear fall. On his phone's lock screen, hidden beneath sophisticated encryption, was the last family photo they'd taken together. Tommy on his shoulders, Maria laughing beside them, a happiness frozen in time before everything shattered. Soon, he promised himself. Soon the evidence would be complete, the trap would spring, and he could finally explain everything. Until then, he would keep watching, protecting, loving from a distance that felt wider than any ocean. The lullaby's melody followed him as he walked to his waiting car, a bittersweet reminder of all he'd lost and all he hoped to regain. The pattern began subtly. Every time the mysterious businessman appeared, Tommy's daily earnings doubled or tripled. Sometimes it was through direct overpayment, $20 for a $5 shine becoming their unspoken arrangement. Other times, Tommy would find extra bills accidentally left behind or tucked into his kit when he wasn't looking. At first, Tommy tried to return the excess money. "Sir, you gave me too much," he'd say, holding out the extra bills, his mother's lessons about honesty warring with their desperate need. "Keep it," the man would reply from behind his newspaper shield. "Consider it a bonus for excellent service." There was something in his voice during these exchanges, a gentleness that reminded Tommy of half-forgotten memories. But he pushed those thoughts away, focusing instead on the practical impact of this unexpected kindness. His mother's prescriptions could be filled on time now. They could afford better food, even some fresh fruits that Maria's doctors recommended. "Mijo, where is this money coming from?" his mother asked one evening, noticing the fuller grocery bags. You're not doing anything dangerous, are you?" Tommy hated lying to her, but the truth seemed more dangerous somehow. "Just more customers at the library cafe, Mama. People are generous when they see me studying." The cafe story had become his standard excuse for being out after school. Maria touched his cheek gently. "You're so much like your father sometimes. He always tried to protect me, too." The comparison stung, though Tommy wasn't sure why. He busied himself arranging her pills for the evening, another task he'd mastered too young. "I'm nothing like him, Mama. I'll never leave you." At the train station, the businessman became a regular fixture of Tommy's afternoons. Unlike other customers who rushed through their shoe shines, this one lingered, hidden behind his newspaper, but somehow attentive. He asked careful questions about Tommy's day, his school, his interests, never pushing too hard, but building a picture of his life piece by piece. "You like math?" the man asked one day, after Tommy mentioned struggling with fractions. "Yes, sir. Well, I used to. It's harder now with..." He trailed off, not wanting to admit how exhaustion affected his studies. The next day, a new math workbook appeared in Tommy's kit during his lunch break. The note inside read simply, "Practice makes perfect." The handwriting tugged at something in Tommy's memory, but he dismissed it as imagination. These small gifts became another pattern. School supplies appearing when needed, a new jacket left forgotten on a bench as winter approached, even a white pair of proper work gloves when the man noticed Tommy's chapped hands from the cleaning solutions. "Angel's looking out for you," Rosa, the station's coffee cart vendor, commented one afternoon. She'd taken to saving Tommy day-old pastries, unable to bear seeing him hungry. "That man, he watches you like a father." "I have no father," Tommy replied sharply, but the words lacked their usual bitterness. The businessman's kindness had begun to soften something hard inside him, though he fought against the feeling. The lullaby remained their unspoken connection. Tommy hummed it without thinking while he worked, and though he couldn't see the man's face, he sensed how the melody affected him. Sometimes the newspaper trembled slightly, or the man's breathing would catch in a way that seemed heavy with emotion. One particularly cold afternoon, Tommy arrived at his usual spot to find a thermos of hot chocolate waiting. The note attached read, "Even hard workers need warmth." The gesture brought unexpected tears to his eyes, reminding him of winter mornings long ago when his father would make hot chocolate before school. "Tell me about your family," the man asked that day, his voice carefully casual, Tommy's hands stilled on the polishing cloth. "It's just me and my mom now." "And your father?" "Left 5 years ago." Tommy resumed polishing with unnecessary force. "Guess we weren't good enough for him." The newspaper crinkled as the man's hands tightened. Sometimes things aren't what they seem, son." "Don't call me that," Tommy snapped, surprising himself with the vehemence of his reaction. You can't." "I'm sorry," the man said softly. "You're right, I overstepped." They finished the shoe shine in silence, but when Tommy held out his hand for payment, the man pressed something extra into it, along with the money, a small worn photo. Tommy recognized it instantly, himself as a toddler, sitting on his father's shoulders at the park, both of them laughing. "Where did you—" But when he looked up, the man was gone, lost in the station's crowd. Tommy stared at the photo, his mind racing with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. That night he slipped the picture under his pillow, and for the first time in years, he let himself cry for the father he'd lost, or perhaps for the father who, somehow, seemed to be finding his way back. James sat in his penthouse office long after most of the city had gone to sleep, surrounded by reports about his family's situation. His private investigators had been thorough. Medical records showing Maria's cancer progression, school reports detailing Tommy's declining grades, bank statements revealing their precarious financial state. Each page felt like an accusation, a reminder of his failure to protect them despite his sacrifice. "The latest surveillance photos, sir," his security chief Michael said quietly, placing a folder on the desk. "Your son's been working longer hours, sometimes until dark." James's hands clenched around his coffee cup. "And Maria? The treatment's not working as well as hoped. Her doctors are recommending a more aggressive approach, but—" Michael hesitated. "The cost would be substantial." The wealth James had accumulated during his exile suddenly felt meaningless. What good was building an empire if he couldn't openly help his own family? The anonymous donations he managed to channel through various charities and insurance fronts barely covered their basic needs. "There's more," Michael continued. "The organization's starting to ask questions. They've noticed the pattern of support around your family. If they connect it back to you—" James stood abruptly, moving to the window overlooking the city lights. Somewhere out there, his son was probably just getting home, tired from another day of trying to be the man of the house. His wife was likely lying awake, worrying about bills and treatment options. "Show me the hospital's financial records," he demanded. "There has to be a way to ensure she gets that treatment without raising suspicions." For hours, they worked on creating a complex web of charitable foundations and grant programs that could funnel money to Maria's case without drawing attention. Each transaction had to be carefully obscured, each donation made to look random and unconnected. "Sir," Michael said gently, as dawn began to paint the sky, Maybe it's time to consider telling them the truth. The evidence against the organization is almost complete. Once it goes public and risk them becoming targets, James shook his head. The moment those men realize I've been building a case against them, they'll lash out at anyone connected to me. I won't gamble with their lives, but the truth was becoming harder to contain. Yesterday's interaction with Tommy, sharing that old photo, had been a dangerous indulgence. He'd seen the recognition flash in his son's eyes, the questions beginning to form. A new report caught his attention. Tommy's teacher had filed a concern about his exhaustion, noting moments when he'd fallen asleep in class. The boy was burning himself out, trying to be everything his family needed. Like father, like son, Michael observed, noting James's own exhausted reflection in the window. He has your determination. And my stubbornness, James agreed quietly, but he deserves better than this double life, better than what I've given him. The morning's financial papers lay scattered across his desk, headlines praising his business acumen under his assumed name. The empire he'd built was meant to be a weapon against the organization that had threatened his family. Each successful venture another piece of evidence in the case he was building. But watching Tommy struggle daily, seeing Maria fight her illness, alone made his achievements taste like ash. His phone buzzed with an alert from the train station's security feed. Tommy arriving early, setting up his shoe-shining kit with mechanical precision. The boy looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, visible even on the grainy footage. The prosecutor thinks we're 3 months away, Michael reported, referring to the case they'd built against the organization. Maybe 4. Everything has to be perfect, or they'll slip through some legal loophole. 3 more months of watching his son work himself to exhaustion. 3 months of his wife facing cancer without him. 3 months of maintaining this elaborate charade while his family suffered. James touched the screen, tracing Tommy's image with a finger. Have we confirmed the treatment facility in Switzerland, the one I asked about? Yes, sir. Top oncology center, completely discreet. We can have Mrs. Rodriguez transferred there within 48 hours of getting her consent, but Michael paused. That would mean revealing at least part of the truth. The risk was enormous. Even suggesting such specialized treatment would raise questions about its source. But watching his son on the security feed, seeing the weight of adult responsibilities crushing his childhood, James knew something had to change. Prepare the paperwork, he ordered, and increase surveillance on the organization's key players. If they so much as look in my family's direction, I want to know immediately. As sunrise painted the city gold, James prepared for another day of careful deception. He would play his part, the mysterious businessman behind his newspaper shield, while orchestrating his family's protection from the shadows. But for the first time in 5 years, he allowed himself to imagine a future where shadows weren't necessary, where truth could finally emerge into light. Hold on, he whispered to the image of his tired son. Just a little longer, Papa's coming home. The old photograph burned a hole in Tommy's pocket as he worked at the train station. He'd started carrying it with him everywhere, studying it during quiet moments, trying to reconcile the laughing father in the image with both the man who'd abandoned them and the mysterious businessman who'd somehow had this precious memory in his possession. You seem distracted today, the businessman commented from behind his newspaper. It was raining again, but he'd insisted on a shoe shine, despite his shoes being practically spotless already. Just thinking, Tommy replied, his hands moving automatically through the familiar motions of buffing leather. The lullaby hummed in his throat without conscious thought, and he noticed the man's newspaper trembling slightly. That song, the man said carefully. Where did you learn it? Tommy's hands stilled. My father used to sing it before he swallowed hard. Why did you have that picture? The newspaper lowered just slightly, not enough to reveal the man's face, but enough to show his hands, gripping the pages tightly. Perhaps your father wanted you to have it. You know him? Tommy's heart raced. You've seen him? A long pause followed, filled only with the sound of rain and passing trains. Everyone has their reason, son. Sometimes. The hardest choices are made out of love. Love? Tommy spat the word, anger rising suddenly. He left us. And now, Mama's sick. And He cut himself off, realizing he'd said too much. The man leaned forward slightly. Your mother? Is she getting proper treatment? Tommy returned to polishing, his movements more aggressive. We manage, but the costs? They must be. We manage, Tommy repeated firmly, his mother's pride echoing in his voice. The next day, a thick envelope appeared in Tommy's kit during his lunch break. Inside was a brochure for a prestigious cancer treatment center in Switzerland, along with details about a charitable foundation that helped fund patient care. I can't accept this, Tommy said when the businessman appeared for his usual shine. It's too much. It's not from me, the man said softly. The foundation, they look for special cases. Your mother would qualify. Tommy stared at the brochure, hope warring with suspicion. Why are you helping us? Because, the man's voice caught, because everyone deserves a second chance, even fathers who have made mistakes. That evening, Tommy showed the brochure to his mother. Maria's hands trembled as she read about the treatment center's success rates. Mijo, this is one of the best facilities in the world. But how? A foundation, Tommy explained, repeating what he'd been told. They want to help, Mama. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she studied the information. It seems too good to be true, like an angel watching over us. Tommy thought of the businessman, of his careful questions and constant kindness, of the photograph that connected past to present. Maybe that's exactly what it is. Their daily shoe-shining sessions took on new meaning, the businessman asked. Subtle questions about Maria's condition, offering gentle suggestions about treatment options and patient advocacy. Tommy found himself sharing more than he intended, his fears about his mother's health, his struggles at school, his memories of better times. Papa used to take me to the park every Sunday, he said one afternoon, surprising himself with the voluntary mention of his father. We'd get ice cream, even in winter. Mama said we were crazy, but... He smiled at the memory. The newspaper shook slightly. The pistachio stand near the fountain? Tommy's head snapped up. How did you... Lucky guess, the man said quickly. Many fathers take their sons for ice cream. But Tommy's mind was racing, connecting dots he'd been avoiding. The familiar handwriting on notes left with gifts. The way the man always seemed to know exactly what they needed. The trembling hands when Tommy hummed the lullaby. Your shoes, Tommy said suddenly. I've never seen anyone else with that exact style. Italian leather, custom made. Perhaps we should focus on the shine, the man interrupted, his voice tighter. Than usual, just like, Tommy continued, his heart pounding, just like the ones Papa used to wear. He said they were special, made just for Tommy. The man's voice was barely a whisper. Please. The sound of his name, spoken with such familiar love, made Tommy's hands shake. He looked up at the newspaper shield, suddenly desperate to see what lay behind it. Who are you? He demanded. Really? The station's afternoon crowd swirled around them, oblivious to the moment of truth hovering between man and boy. The newspaper lowered just slightly, and for a brief instant, Tommy caught a glimpse of eyes he saw every morning in his own reflection. But before either could speak, a commotion near the station's entrance shattered the moment. Tommy turned toward the noise, and when he looked back, the man was gone. Only a $100 bill remained on the bench, weighted down by a small silver locket, the twin of one his mother still wore, containing a family photo Tommy had never seen. Thelma's pieces were there, waiting to be assembled. But Tommy wasn't sure if he was ready for the picture they would reveal. The call came during math class. Tommy was struggling to focus on fractions when the school secretary appeared at the door, her face grave. Tommy Rodriguez, your mother's been taken to the hospital. The world tilted sideways as he ran through. Hospital corridors, his shoe-shining kit still clutched in his hand. He'd been heading to the train station when the school finally reached him. The emergency room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, making everything seem surreal. Mama? His voice cracked as he found her room. Maria lay pale against white sheets, tubes and monitors, creating a technological web around her small frame. Mijo, she whispered, trying to smile. I'm sorry, I didn't want them to frighten you." Dr. Chen, her oncologist, pulled Tommy aside. "The cancer has become more aggressive. We need to start a new treatment immediately," but he hesitated, glancing at a clipboard. "Your current insurance won't cover it." Tommy's hands tightened around his kit. "How much?" The number the doctor quoted made his head spin. It would take years of shining shoes just to cover the first treatment. There has to be something. There's a charitable foundation that might help, Dr. Chen began. "But the application process takes weeks, and your mother needs treatment now." Tommy thought of the Swiss Treatment Center brochure, still hidden in his drawer at home. The mysterious foundation that his father, because he was almost certain now that the businessman was his father, had mentioned. But how could he explain that to the doctor? "Please," he begged, just give me a day. Maybe there's a way." But his mother's condition deteriorated rapidly. By evening, she was barely conscious, her breathing labored. Tommy sat beside her bed, holding her hand, feeling more helpless than he ever had in his young life. "The lullaby," she murmured, during a brief moment of clarity. "Sing it for me, mijo, like your father used to." Tommy's throat tightened, but he began to hum the familiar melody. From the doorway, a nurse watched with tears in her eyes. "Such a beautiful song," she said softly. "My shift's ending, but a man called about your mother's case? Someone from the Highland Foundation?" "They're sending a representative tonight." Tommy's heart leaped. The businessman, his father, must have found out somehow, but hope crumbled as his mother's monitors began beeping urgently. Medical staff rushed in, pushing him gently but firmly aside. "BP's dropping," someone called out. "We need to stabilize her." Before Tommy found himself in the hallway, pressed against the wall, his world narrowing to the sound of urgent voices and medical equipment. His fingers found the silver locket in his pocket, clutching it like a lifeline. "Please," he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was praying to. "Please don't take her too, Tommy." The voice behind him was achingly familiar. He turned to find the businessman, his father, standing there, no newspaper shield. This time, James Rodriguez's face showed every one of the 5 years they'd been apart, lined with worry and grief. "You," Tommy's voice caught between anger and desperate hope. "Where have you been? Why now? Why?" "There's no time," James cut him off gently. "The Foundation's paperwork is being processed now. A medical transport team is standing by to take your mother to Switzerland, but we need to move quickly." Tommy stared at the man who had abandoned them, who had secretly watched over them, who now appeared offering salvation. "Why didn't you—" "Just tell us. Why all the secrets?" "Because knowing would have put you in danger. It still might. But your mother's life matters more than anything else now." James reached out, hesitating, just short of touching Tommy's shoulder. "I'll explain everything, I promise. But right now, we need to focus on saving her." As if to emphasize his words, the monitors in Maria's room screamed a new warning. Tommy spun back toward the door, but James caught his arm. "Let them work," he said softly. "The best oncologist in Europe is already reviewing her case. We have a plan. We just need her to hold on a little longer." Tommy's legs gave out, and he found himself caught in his father's arms for the first time in 5 years. The embrace was awkward, heavy with lost time and unanswered questions, but it anchored him as the medical crisis swirled around them. "Still angry?" Tommy managed between sharp breaths. "You left us. You let us think." "I know." James's voice was rough with emotion. "And you have every right to be angry, but right now your mother needs both of us. Can we focus on that first?" Through the room's window, Tommy could see the medical team working frantically to stabilize Maria. The sight of her so vulnerable, so close to slipping away, made all other concerns seem small. "Save her," he whispered against his father's expensive suit jacket. "Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, just save her." James's arms tightened around him. "I will. I promise. No more shadows, no more hiding. We'll face this together." The lullaby's melody drifted through Tommy's mind as he clung to his father, its familiar notes carrying a new weight of hope and fear. Outside the hospital windows, night was falling over the city, but for the first time in years, darkness didn't mean facing their struggles alone. As medical teams prepared Maria for transport to Switzerland, James led Tommy to a private waiting room. Security personnel, discreet but alert, positioned themselves outside the door. The time for secrets was ending, but the truth carried its own dangers. "It started 6 years ago," James began, his voice heavy with memory. "I was working as a senior accountant for Maxwell Financial. The job was perfect, good salary, excellent benefits, close to home. Then I noticed discrepancies in some offshore accounts." Tommy sat rigidly in his chair, torn between hunger for answers and lingering anger. Money laundering? Much worse. The company was a front for one of the largest criminal organizations in the country. They weren't just hiding money, they were funding human trafficking, drug operations, political assassinations. James's hands clenched. Once I understood what I was seeing, I couldn't look away. "So you gathered evidence?" "Slowly, carefully. I thought I was being subtle, but..." James's eyes darkened with remembered fear. "One night, they invited me to a special meeting. Their enforcer, a man named Victor, showed me photos. You walking to school, your mother in the garden, our house at night. The message was clear: stay quiet or lose everything." Tommy's breath caught. "But you didn't stay quiet. You left instead. I made a deal. My silence and disappearance in exchange for your safety. They wanted me where they could watch me, far from any law enforcement. But I had my own plans." A grim smile touched James's lips. "I spent 5 years building an empire under another name, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. The businessman act, the newspaper, necessary camouflage. Victor's, men still monitor your mother's house, your school. If they'd recognized me..." James shuddered, but I couldn't stay completely away. Especially after Maria got sick. Tommy fingered the silver locket. The gifts, the extra money, the foundation, all carefully channeled through layers of charities and shell companies. I thought I could protect you both from a distance, but James was cut off by a knock at the door. Michael, his security chief, entered with fresh intel. "Victor's people are moving. They've noticed the medical transport preparations." James stood, tension radiating from every movement. "Accelerate the timeline. Have the prosecutor ready to move the moment Maria's safely out of the country, and double the security on Tommy's transport to the safe house." "Wait," Tommy protested. "What safe house? I'm going with Mama. It's too dangerous. Victor's organization will be watching all flights. We need to..." "No!" Tommy's shout surprised them both. "I just got you back. I'm not losing Mama too. Not now." Father and son stared at each other, 5 years of separation crystallizing in one moment. James saw not the little boy he'd left behind, but a young man forged by hardship and responsibility. Tommy saw not the father who had abandoned them, but a man who'd sacrificed everything to keep them safe. "He's right," Michael said quietly. "Splitting the family now could be more dangerous. Victor will have people watching both of them. Better to move them together with full security." James rubbed his face, the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. "The evidence, if anything happens, is already secure," Michael assured him. "Multiple copies, multiple locations. The prosecutor says it's the strongest case she's seen. Victor's empire is going down, no matter what." Tommy stood squaring his shoulders. "I've been protecting Mama for 5 years. I'm not stopping now." The words hit James like physical blows. This child, his child, had carried adult burdens for so long, had grown strong in ways no child should need to be. "Okay," he conceded, "but you follow security protocols exactly. No risks, no heroics." "Like father, like son," Michael muttered, earning sharp looks from both Rodriguez men. Another knock brought urgent news. Maria was stabilized, ready for transport. The medical team had already loaded her into the private ambulance that would take them to the waiting medical transport plane. As they hurried through hospital corridors, Tommy's hand found his father's. The gesture, unconscious and natural, broke something in James's carefully maintained composure. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For all of it. For not finding another way." Tommy squeezed his hand. "Just don't leave again. Whatever happens, we face it together." "Together," James promised, his voice rough with emotion. But as they approached the hospital exit, Michael's radio crackled with warning. Victor's men had been spotted in the parking lot. The shadow of the past was reaching for them, threatening to shatter their fragile reunion. James pulled Tommy closer, his body tensing for battle. 5 years of planning, of careful maneuvering, had led to this moment. His family was finally within reach. No force on earth, not Victor, not his organization, not all the powers of darkness, would tear them apart again. The night air carried a hint of rain as father and son stepped out to face whatever came next. The lullaby's melody whispered between them, no longer a song of loss, but a battle hymn of family reunited. The hospital parking lot had become a chessboard of shadows and danger. James's security team moved in practiced formations around the medical transport, while Victor's men, at least 6 that they could spot, closed in from multiple directions. Tommy could feel his father's grip tightening on his shoulder as they assessed their options. "The ambulance is armored," Michael murmured, keeping his voice low. "Once we get them inside—" "Movement on the roof," another security officer cut in through their earpieces. "They're trying to control all exit routes." James pulled Tommy closer to the building's wall, his eyes scanning constantly. "Where's our backup?" 10 minutes out. Local police have been compromised. Victor's payroll. Tommy watched the deadly dance unfolding around them, his heart pounding, but his mind surprisingly clear. 5 years of managing crisis had taught him to think under pressure. "The service tunnel," he said suddenly. Both James and Michael turned to him. "The maintenance tunnel that connects to the old wing," Tommy explained. "I used to cut through there on my way to the train station. It comes out 3 blocks away." James's eyes lit with pride and hope. Michael, checking satellite maps now. He's right. Underground passage, not on main blueprints. Victor's men wouldn't know about it. A burst of activity near the ambulance drew their attention. 2 of Victor's men had moved closer, trying to look like casual visitors. Through the vehicle's windows, Tommy could see the medical team working on his mother, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. "We need a distraction," James decided. "Something to draw their attention while we move Maria." Tommy reached into his shoe-shining kit, still clutched in his free hand. Would this help? He pulled out a small flip phone, his emergency contact with his mother. It's got a pretty loud speaker. A ghost of a smile touched James's face. Like father, like son, indeed. He took the phone, quickly programming a number. "Michael, get the medical team ready to move on my signal. Tommy, show our people the tunnel route. I'll handle the distraction." But Tommy started to protest. "Trust me, son." James squeezed his shoulder. "I didn't come this far to lose you now." The next few minutes moved with precision born of desperation. As Tommy guided 2 security officers to the service entrance, James's voice suddenly boomed from multiple phones planted around the parking lot. A recording of what sounded like a police tactical team preparing to move in. Victor's men scattered for cover, their practiced formation breaking. In that moment of chaos, the medical team wheeled Maria's stretcher quickly but carefully toward the building's side entrance, covered by James's remaining security. "Tunnel access is clear," came the report through their earpieces. "But we've got company coming down 7th Street. They moved as fast as they dared with Maria's medical equipment, the tunnel's emergency lighting casting strange shadows. Tommy stayed close to his mother's stretcher, watching her vital signs with the expertise of long practice. Her hand found his in a moment of consciousness. "Mijo!" Her voice was weak but confused. "What's happening?" I thought I saw..." "Rest, Mama," Tommy soothed, his voice steady despite their hurried pace. "Papa's here. He's helping us." Her eyes widened slightly before medication pulled her back under. Tommy felt his father's presence behind him, protective and solid. "Victor's men have found the tunnel entrance," Michael reported tensely. 4 minutes to extraction point. 3 minutes too many, James muttered. He turned to Tommy. "Remember when you were little, how we used to sing the lullaby to help you be brave?" Tommy nodded, understanding flowing between them. Together, their voices rose in the tunnel's darkness, the familiar melody echoing off concrete walls. The medical team moved in rhythm to the song, their steps becoming more confident in the dim light. A shout from behind indicated Victor's men had spotted them. The security team took defensive positions, but in the narrow tunnel, their options were limited. 2 minutes, Michael called out. Extraction team is in position. The sound of running footsteps grew closer. James pushed Tommy and the stretcher behind him, facing the approaching danger. Whatever happens, he said quietly, know that everything I did was for you and your mother. Everything. No. Tommy grabbed his father's arm. No more sacrifices. No more separation. We do this together. A shot rang out in the tunnel, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. But it came from ahead of them, not behind. One of Victor's men had circled around to cut them off. The security team reacted instantly, returning fire and shielding the family. The medical team pushed Maria's stretcher into an alcove, protecting their patient with their own bodies. Tommy found himself sandwiched between his parents, his father's arm holding him back, his mother's hand still clasped in his. 1 minute, Michael's voice remained professionally calm. Hold position. The tunnel erupted into chaos as both sides engaged. The lullaby still hung in the air, now a counterpoint to gunfire and shouts. In that moment, surrounded by danger, but finally together, the Rodriguez family faced their past and future as one. Time seemed to stretch like taffy, each second both endless and too quick. Tommy could feel his father's heartbeat, hear his mother's breathing, sense the determination flowing between them all. They had spent 5 years apart, surviving separately. Now they would survive together, or not at all. The tunnel's darkness pulsed with muzzle flashes and desperation. Tommy pressed against the alcove wall, his mother's stretcher behind him, his father's broad shoulders shielding them both. The medical team worked frantically to keep Maria stable as the firefight intensified around them. Extraction point compromised, Michael's voice crackled through their earpieces. Victor's men have the exit surrounded. James's response was cut off by another burst of gunfire. A security officer fell, clutching his arm. The tunnel was becoming a death trap, with Victor's forces closing in from both directions. The maintenance shaft, Tommy said suddenly, remembering details from his shortcuts to the train station. There's a vertical access shaft halfway down this section. Maintenance workers use it to reach street level. Too narrow for the stretcher, one of the medical team protested. But not for a rescue basket, another countered. We can transfer her, use the shaft as a manual elevator. James looked at his son with a mixture of pride and worry. You're sure about this shaft? I'm sure. Tommy's voice held no doubt. I used to help the maintenance crew sometimes when they needed small hands to reach drop tools. The decision was made for them as more of Victor's men pushed into the tunnel. The security team was running out of ammunition and options. Michael, get the rescue basket, James ordered. Everyone else, cover our position. Maria stirred on the stretcher, her eyes fluttering open. James? She whispered, seeing her husband clearly for the first time. Am I dreaming? No, mi amor. James touched her face gently. I'm here. We're all here. You came back. Her voice faded as another wave of medication took hold. I never really left, he whispered. But she was already unconscious. The next few minutes were a blur of careful but hurried action. The medical team transferred Maria to the rescue basket while security held their position. Tommy led them to the maintenance shaft, his small flashlight revealing the metal rungs climbing upward. We'll need to haul her up manually, Michael explained, rigging a pulley system with equipment from his tactical gear. 4-story climb. A bullet pinged off the wall near them, sending concrete fragments flying. Their time was running out. Start with Maria, James commanded. Tommy, you go next. No, Tommy's voice was firm. I'm staying with you, son. You promised, together. The exchange of glances between father and son spoke volumes. 5 years of separation had taught them both the cost of splitting up. Together then, James agreed. Michael, coordinate the ascent. We'll cover your rear. The shaft echoed with effort and tension as the medical team began the careful process of raising Maria's rescue basket. Each floor brought them closer to safety, but also closer to whatever awaited them above. Tommy and James worked in synchronized silence, passing ammunition to the security team, monitoring Maria's progress, watching each other's backs as if they'd never been apart. The lullaby hummed softly between them, a thread of comfort in the chaos. "Third floor," Michael reported. "Street level in sight." A shout from below warned of Victor's men approaching. The security team's return fire was becoming sporadic, ammunition running critically low. "James," Michael's voice carried urgency. "Victor's here. He's coordinating personally now." Tommy felt his father stiffen. "He never comes into the field himself, not unless he's desperate," Michael finished. "The evidence must have him spooked." Another burst of gunfire, closer now. They could hear Victor's voice echoing in the tunnel, carrying the accent. Tommy remembered from his father's description. "Come now, James. You've had your reunion. Time to end this game." James's hand found Tommy's shoulder. "Whatever happens, don't!" Tommy cut him off. "We're almost there. We're going to make it." Above them, Maria's rescue basket neared the final floor. The medical team reported good vital signs. She was holding stable, despite the jostling ascent. "Street level secured," came a new voice through their earpieces. "Extraction team in position." Hope flickered, but Victor's next words froze everyone in place. "Such a shame about the evidence." His voice carried false concern. "All those carefully gathered documents, all those witness statements, all stored in that secure facility that just caught fire." James's face went pale. "Michael?" "Checking now. Damn. Secondary site compromised too. They're burning everything. 5 years of work, of sacrifice, of careful planning, all going up in flames." Victor was systematically destroying their chance at justice, at freedom from his organization's reach. Tommy watched his father's expression shift from shock to despair to something harder. "Papa?" "It's okay," James said softly. "The evidence doesn't matter anymore. Only you and your mother matter now. But your case, your plan, was just a plan." James pulled his son close as another spray of bullets sparked off the walls. "You're real. This is real. Everything else can burn." Above them, Maria reached street level. Below, Victor's men closed in. Father and son stood together in the narrow shaft, facing a choice between escape and annihilation. Tommy gripped his father's hand. Together, together. The lullaby rose between them one more time as they prepared for their final push toward freedom. Whether they would find salvation or destruction at the top of that shaft, they would face it as a family, complete, at last, if only for these precious moments. The maintenance shaft became a vertical battlefield as Tommy and James climbed toward street level. Victor's men fired upward while the extraction team provided cover from above. Each rung brought them closer to either salvation or destruction. "James!" Victor's voice echoed up the shaft. "You disappoint me. 5 years of our hospitality, and this is how you repay us? By running back to the family you abandoned?" James paused his climb long enough to shout back, "Your hospitality was a prison, Victor, just like everything else you touch." Tommy climbed steadily beside his father, trying to ignore the bullets sparking off metal around them. The shaft's narrow confines amplified every sound: gunfire, shouts, the rasp of their breathing, the click of boots on rungs. "One more floor," Michael reported from above. "Maria's secure in the medical transport. We're ready to move the moment you clear the shaft." But Victor had one more card to play. "Such a shame about the evidence, yes? But what you don't know, James, is how we found it. Would you like to meet our new friend, the one who helped us? Locate your secret caches." A new voice drifted up the shaft, familiar enough to make both Tommy and James freeze in place. "I'm sorry, brother," the voice said, "but family comes first." "Uncle Robert?" Tommy whispered, recognizing his father's younger brother's voice. James's face hardened with understanding. Of course, that's how they knew about Maria's cancer treatments, about Tommy's routines. "You've been watching us for them," they offered. "Me a choice," Robert replied. "Help them, or join you in exile. I chose survival." "You chose betrayal," James spat back. The words echoed off metal walls, heavy with years of accumulated pain. Gunfire erupted again, more intense now. Victor's men had reached the base of the shaft. The extraction team above returned fire, but their angle was poor. "Move," Michael ordered through their earpieces. "Street-level access is directly above you." Tommy climbed faster, adrenaline overriding. exhaustion. His father matched his pace, both of them racing toward the square of light above. But Robert's revelation had shaken something loose in James. Tommy could see it in his eyes. "All these years," James gasped between rungs, "I thought I was protecting you, but I left you vulnerable to enemies inside our own family." "You're here now," Tommy replied firmly. "That's what matters." They reached the final section of the climb just as Victor's men achieved a better firing position. Bullets whizzed past with terrifying accuracy. One caught James's sleeve, drawing blood. "Papa!" "It's nothing," James assured him, though his grip on the rungs tightened. "Keep climbing." The shaft's exit was tantalizingly close. Tommy could see Michael and the extraction team providing cover fire, could glimpse the medical transport where his mother waited. Freedom was literally within reach. That's when Victor played his final hand. Such devotion, his voice carried up the shaft. "But tell me, James, did you really think I wouldn't have a backup plan? Right now, my men are approaching Maria's transport. One signal from me and—" "You're lying," James shouted, but doubt crept into his voice. "Check the security feed," Victor replied smugly. Michael's curse through their earpieces confirmed the threat. 3 hostiles approaching the transport from the blind side. "Our teams are pinned down. Can't intercept." Tommy watched his father's face cycle through emotions, fear, rage, calculation. They were 2 stories up, too far to reach the transport in time. Unless— "The window washing rig," Tommy said suddenly, pointing to the abandoned platform hanging alongside the building. "We can swing across." James followed his son's gaze, measuring angles and distances. The platform hung 20 feet away, but its cables extended nearly to their position. A desperate jump might reach them. "Too dangerous," James started to say. But Tommy was already moving. With the natural agility of youth, Tommy launched himself from the shaft's exit, hands outstretched toward the cables. For one heart-stopping moment, he hung suspended between safety and disaster. Then his fingers closed around cold steel, and he swung toward the platform. "No!" Victor's shout echoed with genuine surprise. The sound of running feet suggested he was racing to get a clear shot. James didn't hesitate. He followed his son's leap, catching the cables just as Victor's men opened fire. The platform swung wildly with their combined weight, but held. "Transport team, be ready to move," James ordered through his earpiece as they rappelled down the cables. "Michael, cover our descent." Tommy's hands burned from the friction, but he didn't slow down. They could see Victor's men approaching the medical transport from the opposite side of the building. It would be close. "Like riding the park zip line," James said encouragingly as they descended. "Remember?" Tommy managed a tight smile. "You always said I was too reckless. You're your father's son." They reached ground level just as Victor's men turned the corner toward Maria's transport. What followed was a blur of motion and instinct. James, going low while Tommy went high, years of separation dissolving in one moment of perfect coordination. The first hostile went down to James's tackle. The second caught Tommy's shoe-shining kit full in the face, the heavy wood box proving an effective weapon. The third raised his weapon, only to fall to Michael's precise shot from above. Clear. Michael's voice carried both relief and pride. "Get to the transport now." They ran the final distance together, father and son, as Victor's furious shouts faded behind them. The medical transport's door opened to reveal Maria, still unconscious but safe, waited for by a family, finally, impossibly, complete. The medical transport raced through city streets, its sirens clearing a path while James's security teams ran interference against Victor's pursuing forces. In the back, Tommy sat between his parents, one hand clasping his mother's as she drifted in and out of consciousness, the other gripping his father's sleeve as if afraid he might disappear again. "They're falling back," Michael reported from the front seat. "Our counter-surveillance teams confirm Victor's vehicles are breaking off pursuit." James's expression remained tense. He's not giving up. He's regrouping. "The evidence," Tommy said, quietly. "All of it's really gone?" "Not quite everything." James pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Victor found our decoy caches. The real evidence—" "I kept that closer to home." Maria stirred on her stretcher, her eyes focusing slowly. "James, It wasn't a dream? No, mi amor. James leaned over, touching her face gently. I'm here. We're all here. Why? The single word carried 5 years of pain. Why did you leave us? The moment they'd all been dreading had arrived. Tommy felt his father's body tense, saw the struggle in his eyes as he searched for words to explain the inexplicable. Victor's organization, James began slowly. They didn't just threaten to kill you, they promised to destroy you slowly. Robert, my own brother, he was already working with them. They knew everything about us, Tommy's school schedule, your medical history, our financial vulnerabilities. But you could have told us, Tommy protested. We could have run together. James shook his head. They had people everywhere. Police, hospitals, border control. Running would have made us targets. Staying separated, letting them think they'd broken me. It gave me time to build a case against them. While we thought you'd abandoned us, Maria's voice was stronger now, anger giving her strength. While Tommy had to grow up without a father, while I faced cancer alone. Not alone, James corrected softly. Never alone. Every insurance payment, every anonymous donation, every clerical error that covered a medical bill, that was me, working through layers of shell companies, finding ways to help without exposing you. Tommy remembered all the mysterious helps that had kept them afloat. The rent that somehow got paid when they were short, the scholarships that appeared just when needed, the insurance that never quite ran out. The businessman, he said suddenly. At the train station, how long? 3 months, James admitted. When I heard about your shoe-shining work, I couldn't stay away anymore. It was reckless, selfish maybe, but I had to see you, had to find some way to connect. The transport swayed as it took a sharp turn. Michael called back. 10 minutes to the airfield. Our plane is fueled and ready. Maria's monitor beeped a warning. The doctor quickly adjusted her medication, buying them precious stability. She needs rest, he advised. The stress of all this. Tell them, Maria insisted, gripping James's hand. Tell them everything, no more secrets. James looked at his wife and son, seeing 5 years of hurt in their eyes. Victor's organization, they specialize in using family against family. They find people with skills they need, then use their loved ones as leverage. That's how they recruited Robert, threatened his gambling debts would fall on our parents unless he helped them. And you? Tommy asked. What did they want from you? My accounting skills. I'd found patterns in their money laundering, ways they moved billions through seemingly legitimate businesses. They wanted me to expand their operation, make it impossible to trace. But you did the opposite, Tommy realized. You traced everything. James nodded. Every transaction, every front company, every bribe and payoff. 5 years of evidence, building an airtight case. Now it's gone, burned in their raid, and his phone buzzed, interrupting him. The message made him freeze. Papa? It's from the prosecutor's office, James said, his voice wondering. The evidence, the real evidence. It just hit every major news outlet and law enforcement agency simultaneously. Auto-timed release, triggered by the attack on our decoy sites. Michael let out a whoop from the front seat. The bastards took the bait. Their raid on the decoy caches activated the dead man's switch. Maria squeezed James's hand. You planned this? Hoped it wouldn't be necessary, he admitted. But yes, the real evidence was always meant to go public if they moved against us. Victor's attempt to silence us just guaranteed his own exposure. Tommy stared at his father with new understanding. Every move, every plan, every sacrifice had been calculated. A chess game played out over years, with their safety as the ultimate prize. The transport crested a hill, revealing the private airfield ahead. A medical evacuation plane waited on the runway, its engines already spinning up. But Tommy noticed his father's attention was on a different sight, the city skyline behind them, where multiple police units could be seen converging on Victor's known holdings. It's really over? Tommy asked. James pulled his son close, including Maria in the embrace as best he could around her medical equipment. The running is over, the hiding is over. But our story, that's just beginning. The transport's doors opened to fresh air and freedom, carrying a family broken by necessity and reunited by love. Above them, the first light of dawn painted the sky with promise, while behind them, Victor's empire began to crumble under the weight of long-hidden truths finally brought to light. The Swiss Medical Center gleamed like a fortress of hope against the Alpine backdrop. 3 weeks had passed since their dramatic escape, and the Rodriguez family was slowly learning how to be whole again. Maria's treatment was progressing better than expected, the advanced protocols and dedicated care giving her a fighting chance that would have been impossible before. Tommy sat by his mother's window watching snow fall on distant peaks while she slept. His father's quiet footsteps approached, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate, a morning ritual they'd rediscovered from years past. "Any change?" James asked, handing Tommy a cup. "Dr. Sanders says her numbers are improving. The new medication seems to be working." They sat in comfortable silence, both remembering other hospital rooms, other vigils, but this time they faced it together, sharing the weight that Tommy had carried alone for so long. "The prosecutors called," James said finally. "Victor's organization. His unraveling faster than they expected. Robert, your uncle, he's agreed to testify in exchange for protection." Tommy's hands tightened around his cup. "Have you spoken to him?" "No." James's voice was heavy with old pain. Some betrayals cut too deep for words. Maria stirred, her eyes opening to find her family nearby. These moments of consciousness were becoming longer, more frequent. "My boys." She smiled weakly. "Both of you, together." They moved to her bedside, one on each side, completing a triangle broken 5 years ago. Tommy noticed how his father's hand shook slightly as he touched Maria's face, still uncertain of his right to such intimacy after so long away. "I've been dreaming," Maria said softly, "about the park where we used to go on Sundays. Remember, the pistachio ice cream? Even in winter," Tommy grinned. "Papa said cold weather was the best time for ice cream because it wouldn't melt." "Your mother thought we were crazy," James added, his voice rough with emotion. "We were," Maria agreed. "Crazy with happiness." Her eyes met James's. "We can be again, yes? With time?" The question hung in the air, weighted with hope and hurt. James took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. "Time, truth, and trust," he said. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning back what I lost." Knock at the door announced Dr. Sanders' arrival. The oncologist's smile carried genuine warmth. She'd become invested in this family's unusual story. "Good morning, everyone. Maria, your latest results are very encouraging." They listened as she explained the treatment's progress, the reduced tumor markers, the strengthening vital signs. Tommy felt hope building with each positive indicator, but noticed his father taking detailed notes, asking specific questions. 5 years of watching from afar had made him intensely focused on understanding every aspect of Maria's care. "And the physical therapy?" James asked. "Is she strong enough to start?" "Small steps," Dr. Sanders advised. "But yes, we can begin. Gentle exercises. In fact," she smiled at Tommy, "we could use a young man's steady shoulder to lean on during walks." Tommy straightened proudly. Supporting his mother was a role he knew well, but sharing it with his father gave the responsibility new meaning. Later that afternoon, they made their first family walk through the hospital's garden courtyard. Maria between them, each step slow, but purposeful. The Swiss winter sun cast long shadows, but its light held warmth and promise. "Tell me," Maria said during a rest on a heated bench, "about the years we lost. Not the danger or the fear. Tell me about your life, James. Did you think of us?" "Every moment," he replied without hesitation. "Every success was hollow because I couldn't share it. Every night I'd look at your picture and sing our lullaby, imagining Tommy growing up, wondering if you'd found happiness without me." "There was no happiness without you," she said simply. "Only survival." Tommy watched his parents navigate this delicate conversation, seeing how they tried to bridge the gap of lost years with careful words and gentle truths. "I used to imagine finding you," Tommy admitted. "Different scenarios, like in the movies. Sometimes I was angry, sometimes forgiving, but I never imagined." He gestured at the medical center, the guards discreetly patrolling the perimeter, the new reality they inhabited. "Life rarely follows our scripts," James said softly, "but sometimes it gives us second chances, if we're brave enough to take them." A hospital volunteer approached with a cart of books and magazines. Among them, Tommy spotted international newspapers, carrying headlines about Victor's organization, about exposed corruption and arrests. Their private drama had become public justice, their pain transformed into positive change. "Your story has inspired others," Dr. Sanders had told them. "We've had 3 similar cases already. Families reuniting after being separated by criminal threats, seeking healing together." The snow began falling again as they made their way back to Maria's room. Tommy found himself humming the lullaby, its melody now carrying notes of hope rather than loss. His father joined in softly, then his mother, their voices weaving together. "In the winter quiet. We'll need a bigger apartment," Maria mused as they helped her back into bed. "When I'm stronger, somewhere with a garden perhaps." The simple domesticity of the comment, planning a future together, brought tears to James's eyes. "Anywhere you want me, amor. Anywhere in the world." Tommy watched his parents share a look of deep understanding, seeing how love could survive separation, betrayal, and time. Their healing had only begun, but like Maria's recovering strength, it grew stronger each day. Outside the window, the Alps stood eternal and unchanging, while within the hospital room, a family learned that change, even painful change, could lead to precious renewal. Spring came early to the Swiss Alps, bringing with it signs of renewal both outside and within the medical center. Maria's progress had exceeded all expectations, her latest scans showing dramatic improvement. The doctors credited the advanced treatment protocols, but Tommy suspected his mother's renewed will to live, sparked by their family's reunion, played an equally important role. "Look what your father brought," Maria called him into her room one morning. Spread across her bed were old photo albums, somehow salvaged from their past life. Tommy sat beside her, touching the worn covers reverently. "I thought these were lost." "Hidden," James corrected, joining them. "Along with other precious things, in a safe deposit box under your mother's maiden name. I couldn't risk Victor's men finding them." They spent hours going through the photos, rebuilding their shared history page by page. Baby pictures of Tommy that made his father's voice catch with emotion, family vacations that now carried deeper meaning. The last Christmas they'd spent together, everyone smiling, unaware of the approaching storm. "You were so small," James marveled, touching a photo of Tommy on his first bicycle. "And now I've missed so much." "Not everything," Tommy said quietly. "You saw more than we knew, all those times you helped from the shadows." Maria turned a page, revealing pressed flowers from their old garden, the anonymous donations to my medical fund, the school scholarships for Tommy, the rent that was mysteriously paid when we fell behind. "That was all you?" James nodded. "I had to be careful. Too much help would have drawn Victor's attention, but I couldn't bear knowing you were struggling." "The businessman at the train station," Tommy added. "How did you know I was shining shoes there?" "Michael's team monitored your routines, making sure Victor's men kept their distance. When they reported you working after school." James's hands clenched. "I had to see for myself. Had to find some way to connect, even if you couldn't know who I was." A nurse brought lunch, proper homemade soup that Maria could finally enjoy, her appetite returning with her strength. They ate together, sharing memories of family meals long ago. "Remember the Sunday breakfasts?" Tommy asked. "Papa would make pancakes in funny shapes." "Mostly funny-shaped accidents," James laughed. "Your mother was the real cook." "Still am," Maria declared. "When I'm stronger, I'll teach you both. No more restaurant food and hospital meals." The simple domestic promise brought smiles all around. They were learning to look forward, to plan a future, even as they healed their past. Dr. Sanders's afternoon visit brought more good news. "The latest blood work is excellent. If this continues, we can discuss outpatient treatment within a month." "Really?" Tommy sat up straighter. "We could go home?" "Home. Maria repeated thoughtfully. But where is home now? James took her hand. Wherever we're together. I found a house near Lausanne. Private, secure, with a garden for your cooking. Herbs and a view of the lake? Close enough to continue treatment here, but he hesitated. Only if you both want that. Tommy watched his parents' silent exchange, seeing 5 years of separation and longing in their eyes. Is it safe? He asked. From Victor's people? Victor won't be threatening anyone for a long time, James assured him. The evidence we released, it's led to arrests across Europe and America. His entire network is being dismantled. And Uncle Robert, in witness protection, he's cooperating fully, trying to make amends in his own way. James' voice held a complex mix of emotions. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, but perhaps new ones can be made. Maria touched the photo album again, tracing their younger, happier, and faces. We can't go back to who we were, she said softly. Too much has changed. But maybe we can build something new, something stronger, like your treatments, Tommy suggested. Using the old strength to build new healing. Dr. Sanders smiled at the analogy. Exactly. Recovery isn't about erasing what happened, it's about growing through it, around it, because of it. They spent the afternoon making plans for their new home. Tommy would have a room overlooking the lake, with space for the study desk his father insisted on. No more shoe shining, just schoolwork. Maria's garden would have raised beds to accommodate her recovering strength. James's office would be open and airy, with nothing to hide anymore. And a kitchen big enough for family meals, Maria added, with an extra-large freezer for pistachio. Ice cream? Even in winter? James asked, his eyes twinkling. Especially in winter. Tommy watched his parents share a smile that bridged 5 years of loneliness. Their love had survived separation, fear, and betrayal. Now it was transforming into something deeper, tempered by experience, strengthened by forgiveness, enriched by understanding. Later, as sunset painted the Alps in rose and gold, Tommy found his father standing at the window. "Papa, are you okay?" "Better than okay," James replied, putting an arm around his son's shoulders. "I was just thinking, all those years of watching from a distance, and now," he gestured to where Maria slept peacefully. "Now I can finally be close enough to help, to heal, to love without hiding." The lullaby rose naturally between them, its familiar melody carrying new harmonies of hope. Outside, spring flowers pushed through melting snow, proving that even the longest winter eventually yields to new growth. The day they were scheduled to move to their new home, Victor made his final play. Michael burst into Maria's hospital room at dawn, his usual composure shattered. "He's escaped custody, 3 guards dead. Local police think he's headed this way." James immediately shifted into protection mode, 5 years of vigilance returning in an instant. Security status, perimeter teams in place, medical transport standing by, safe house prepped as backup. Tommy watched his father's transformation with a mix of fear and fascination. The gentleman who'd spent weeks helping rebuild their family, Bond was suddenly replaced by the careful strategist who'd outmaneuvered Victor's organization for years. "No," Maria's voice cut through their planning. "No more running, no more hiding." They turned to find her sitting up in bed, color high in her cheeks. The past month's treatments had restored much of her strength, but this was something different. A fire that reminded Tommy of the mother who'd held their family together through 5 years of abandonment. "Mi amor," James started. "Victor is coward who uses fear to control people," Maria finished. "He took my husband, my son's father, our life together, no more." Tommy moved to stand beside his mother's bed. "She's right, Papa. We face him together this time." James looked between his wife and son, seeing the same determination in both faces. His phone buzzed with updates from the security team. Victor had been spotted in a nearby village, heading toward the medical center. "He'll expect us to run," James said slowly. Years of strategic thinking, shifting into new patterns. To follow. The protection protocols moved to a secure location, so we do the unexpected, Tommy suggested, remembering chess games with his father long ago. Changed the rules of engagement. A plan began to form, born from their combined strengths. Maria's quiet dignity, Tommy's street-smart adaptability, James's strategic brilliance. Together, they might achieve what none of them could manage alone. Within hours, the medical center's quiet routine had been transformed. Staff and patients were quietly moved to secure areas, while James's security teams took up concealed positions. Tommy helped his mother dress in proper clothes for the first time in weeks, her hospital gown replaced by a simple but elegant outfit that reflected her renewed strength. "The garden," she said firmly. "That's where we meet him." James started to protest but stopped himself. The garden courtyard was defensible, with clear lines of sight for their security teams. More importantly, it was where their family had begun to heal, a symbolic ground of their choosing. They didn't have to wait long. Victor's arrival was announced by the subtle shift in radio communications, the heightened tension among security personnel. He had evaded the local police and found his way to them, just as they knew he would. Touching, his accented voice carried across the courtyard as he emerged from the shadows. The family reunited at last. His expensive suit couldn't hide the desperation in his bearing, a man who'd lost everything, coming to claim one final victory. "It's over, Victor," James said calmly, standing between his former tormentor and his family. "Your organization is dismantled. Your accounts are frozen. Even Robert has turned against you." "Nothing is over while I breathe," Victor snarled. He pulled a gun, the movement almost lazy. "Did you think I came for revenge alone? Your evidence may have destroyed my empire, but I have new friends, ones who would pay handsomely to make you disappear, all of you." Tommy felt his mother's hand squeeze his arm, not in fear, but in readiness. They had discussed this moment, prepared for it. Each knew their part. "You still don't understand," Maria said, her voice carrying clearly. "Your power was always an illusion, built on threats, on breaking families, on making people believe they were alone." "But we're not alone," Tommy added, taking a step forward. "We never were." As if on cue, movement rippled through the courtyard. Hospital staff emerged from doorways, doctors, nurses, orderlies who had helped care for Maria. Local police appeared. At the garden entrances, their weapons trained on Victor. Even patients watched from windows above, bearing witness. "You see only what you can control," James explained, almost gentle in his victory. "But real strength, real power, it comes from what you inspire in others, from the connections you build, not the ones you break." Victor's gun wavered as he registered the faces surrounding him. Not just James's security teams, but ordinary people united against what he represented. His empire had been built on isolating his victims, on making them feel powerless and alone. Now he was the one surrounded, outnumbered not just by weapons, but by witnesses. "It's your choice," James continued. "Surrender now, return to custody, or—" He left the alternative unspoken as security teams moved into final position. For a moment, they saw the truth behind Victor's carefully maintained facade, a glimpse of the frightened man who could only feel strong by making others weak. His gun hand trembled, then slowly lowered. "You've learned nothing," he spat, as police moved in to restrain him. "Sentiment makes you vulnerable. Family makes you weak." "No," Tommy said firmly, standing tall between his parents. "Family makes us unbreakable." As Victor was led away, the morning sun broke through alpine clouds, painting the garden in shades of promise. Maria leaned on her son's shoulder while James held her hand, their trinity restored and strengthened by the challenges they'd overcome. "Now," Maria said with quiet authority, "I believe we were planning to move into our new home today." The simple domestic concern after such drama made them all laugh, releasing weeks of tension. Around them, the garden slowly returned to its peaceful purpose, while above, the mountains stood eternal witness to love's quiet victory over fear. The house on Lake Geneva exceeded all their expectations. Nestled in the hills above Lausanne, it offered both privacy and breathtaking views. Maria stood on the terrace, breathing in the spring air, while Tommy and James carried in the last of their belongings. "Careful with that box," Maria called out as Tommy navigated the doorway. "It has my mother's china." "The same china you never let me use because it was too precious," James teased, following with another box. "I remember being served on paper plates while these dishes stayed safely hidden." "Well," Maria's eyes twinkled, "perhaps it's time to bring out the precious things. No more hiding anything away." Symbolism wasn't lost on any of them. Like the china, their family was emerging from careful storage, ready to be used and cherished again. Tommy's room had been set up first, a bright space with large windows and a desk positioned to catch the morning light. His shoe-shining kit, now retired, held a place of honor on a shelf, not as a reminder of hardship, but as a testament to his strength and determination. "Your school application was accepted," James announced during their first dinner in the new house. "The International School of Lausanne is eager to have you start next term." Tommy looked up from his pasta. Maria had insisted on cooking their first meal, despite being tired from the move. "But my grades, the gaps in my attendance, are explained by exceptional circumstances," James finished. "They were particularly impressed by your mathematical skills managing the family finances at such a young age." Maria reached across to squeeze Tommy's hand. "No more growing up too fast, mijo. Now you get to just be a student." The next few weeks established new routines. Maria's strength continued to improve with regular treatments at the nearby medical center. James worked remotely. His business empire now focused on legitimate ventures that helped other families affected by organized crime. Tommy threw himself into summer preparation courses, making up for lost time with characteristic determination. Their kitchen became the heart of the home, filled with the aromas of Maria's cooking and the sound of shared laughter. James learned to make pancakes properly, no longer producing the funny-shaped accidents of years past. Tommy discovered a talent for baking, his precise nature finding satisfaction in carefully measured ingredients like chemistry, he explained. While making cinnamon rolls one morning, "Everything has to balance perfectly." "Balance," Maria mused, watching her men work together in the kitchen. "That's what we're learning again, isn't it? How to balance the past and future, the hard times and the happy ones." The garden flourished under Maria's care, raised beds filled with herbs and vegetables. James added a greenhouse, ensuring she could pursue her passion year-round. Tommy often found his parents there in the evenings, talking quietly, rebuilding their relationship one shared moment at a time. Their new neighbors, mostly diplomatic families and international professionals, respected their privacy while offering subtle welcome. The local police chief, briefed on their situation, ensured regular patrols without being intrusive. Security remained necessary but faded into the background of their daily lives. "Look what I found," Tommy announced one Saturday, carrying a dusty box from the garage. Inside was his father's old chess set, saved along with other family treasures. "I remember this," James said softly, running his fingers over the carved pieces. "We were in the middle of teaching you Queen's openings when you left," Tommy finished. The words no longer carried their former bitterness. "Maybe we could start again. I've been practicing online." They set up the board on the terrace, the eternal Alps, bearing witness to this small act of restoration. Maria brought out lemonade and watched her son challenge her husband to their first game in 5 years. "Check," Tommy said after a particularly clever combination. James studied the board with pride and surprise. "You've definitely been practicing. Where did you learn that strategy?" "From you, actually. I used to replay our old games in my head, trying to remember your moves, your teaching." Tommy moved his bishop to strengthen his position. "Even when I was angry, I never forgot those lessons." The game ended in a draw. The student having caught up to the teacher, they reset the pieces in comfortable silence, each understanding that this was about more than chess. Later that evening, as sunset painted the lake in gold, the family sat together on the terrace. The lullaby emerged naturally, their voices harmonizing in the quiet air. But now it was no longer a song of loss and longing. Instead, it had become a celebration of reunion, of healing, of love strong enough to survive any separation. "I never dared dream of this," Maria said, wrapped in a shawl against the evening cool. "All those years, just surviving day to day." "Now we do more than survive," James finished, holding her close. "We live, we love, we build something new." Tommy watched his parents, seeing how they leaned into each other, how years of pain were slowly being replaced by fresh joy. The chess set sat ready for their next game. The garden waited for tomorrow's tending. His school books promised future challenges and achievements. "Something new," he repeated, "built on something strong." The lake reflected the last light of day, its surface as smooth as promise. From the kitchen came the lingering sense of dinner, of home, of family restored. They had all carried their burdens, guilt, grief, responsibility too heavy for their years. Now they carried each other instead, stronger together than they had ever been apart. Summer faded into autumn, and the impact of the Rodriguez family's story continued to spread. James's testimony, combined with the evidence he'd gathered, had triggered investigations across 3 continents. Victor's network had been just one thread in a larger web of corruption, and as each strand was pulled, more truth came to light. Another family reunited, Michael reported during his weekly security briefing. He showed them a newspaper article about a German banker who had finally returned to his children after years of forced separation. "They reached out to thank you. Your case gave them the courage to come forward." Maria, who had started a support group for families affected by organized crime, added the story to her growing collection. Her medical recovery had become intertwined with helping others heal from similar trauma. "It's not just about justice anymore," she explained to a journalist who'd traveled from America to interview them. "It's about showing people that love can survive impossible circumstances, that families can heal." Tommy's role had evolved too. His experience helping younger children at the international school's peer support program had caught the attention of child advocacy organizations. They wanted him to speak at conferences, sharing his perspective on how children cope with family separation and trauma. "I'm not sure I'm ready," he admitted to his father one evening as they played chess on the terrace. Speaking in front of crowds, James studied his son over the chessboard. "You were ready to face down Victor to protect our family. This is just another kind of courage." "Different stakes, though." Tommy moved his knight, creating a subtle threat to James's position. "Back then, I didn't have time to be scared." "Being scared doesn't make you less brave," James countered, both in words and on the board. "It makes your choices more meaningful." The lakeside house had become more than just their home. It was a symbol of transformation. Law enforcement agencies studied their security systems as a model for protecting vulnerable families. Medical centers worldwide adopted protocols developed during Maria's treatment, helping other patients separated from crucial family support. Even Uncle Robert's story served a purpose. His testimony about how criminal organizations exploit family bonds to control people helped authorities develop better protection programs. Though he remained in witness protection, he'd sent a letter through proper channels. "I can't undo what I did," he wrote, "but watching your family rebuild gave me courage to help others avoid my mistakes." One crisp October morning, they received unexpected visitors. The young German family from the newspaper article had made the journey to thank them in person. Their 2 small children played with a soccer ball in the garden while the adults talked on the terrace. "For 3 years, I thought I was protecting them by staying away," the banker explained, his wife holding his hand tightly. "Then we read about your family, about how separation causes its own kind of harm." Maria served her signature hot chocolate, the recipe she'd finally perfected after weeks of practice. "The hardest part," she said gently, "is learning to trust love again, to believe that being together is worth the risk." Tommy watched the children playing below, remembering his own years of confusion and pain, but he also remembered the moment. He'd first recognized his father at the train station, how even anger couldn't completely erase love. "It gets better," he told the banker's teenage daughter later, recognizing the mix of hope and uncertainty in her eyes. Not all at once, but day by day, like watching a garden grow. James's business interests had shifted entirely toward helping other families break free from criminal control. The fortune he'd built during his years of exile now funded witness protection programs, legal support, and rehabilitation services. Money that was meant to corrupt is being used to heal, he explained during a board meeting. "Every family we help weakens the power of those who profit from fear and separation." Their story had even inspired changes in international law. The Rodriguez Protocol established new standards for protecting families threatened by criminal organizations, emphasizing keeping parents and children together whenever possible. "Your father rewrote the rules," Michael told Tommy proudly, "not just for your family, but for everyone facing similar threats." The autumn light turned the lake golden as their visitors prepared to leave. The banker's children had picked flowers from Maria's garden, precious gifts to remember their visit. As the family said goodbye, Tommy noticed how naturally they hugged, how easily love flowed between strangers connected by shared experience. "Will you write to us?" the teenage girl asked him. "Tell us how you learned to trust again." Tommy promised he would, understanding that their healing journey was just beginning, just as his family's continued to unfold. Later that evening, as the Alps turned purple with sunset, the Rodriguez family sat in their favorite spot on the terrace. The chess set waited for another game. Maria's garden released the scent of herbs into the cooling air, and their voices joined naturally in the lullaby that had carried them through darkness back to light. "We built something bigger than ourselves." Maria observed softly. "Our pain became purpose." James nodded, his arm around her shoulders, "and our love became light for others to follow." Tommy looked at his parents, seeing how far they'd come from those desperate days at the train station. Their story had rippled outward, touching lives they'd never meet, offering hope to families still trapped in shadows. "Like the lullaby," he said, one song teaching another, passed down through generations. The lake mirrored the first stars appearing above, each light reflecting infinitely in its depths. Similarly, their family's journey of healing and reunion would continue reflecting in other lives, other stories, other victories of love over fear. 1 year to the day after Tommy first recognized his father at the train station, the Rodriguez family celebrated with a special dinner in their lakeside home. Maria's health had been declared officially in remission, her recovery deemed nothing short of miraculous by her medical team. The dining room table, set with her mother's cherished china, sparkled in candlelight as they gathered to mark not just survival, but triumph. "I have an announcement," Tommy said as they finished the main course. "The Children's Advocacy Group asked me to help establish a summer program for kids whose families are being reunited after separation." "The one at the mountain camp?" James asked, his eyes bright with pride. "Yes, we'll use adventure therapy, group support, all the things that helped me adjust." Tommy smiled at his parents. "Plus, they want you both to speak to the parents' group about rebuilding trust, healing together." Maria reached for her son's hand. "Look at you, mijo, taking your pain and making it purpose." The evening was full of such moments, small victories and shared joy that meant more because of the struggles they'd overcome. James had finally mastered Maria's paella recipe, proving that even the most complex challenges could be conquered with patience and love. Tommy's latest chess match with his father had ended in his first clear victory, demonstrating how student could surpass teacher when given proper support. "Remember the first night in this house?" Maria asked as they moved to the terrace for dessert. "How strange it felt to be together again, how careful we were with each other." They had moved like dancers learning new steps back then, relearning patterns of family life that had been interrupted by 5 years of separation. Now their movements held the ease of practice, the comfort of restored intimacy. "I kept waiting to wake up," James admitted, To find myself back in exile, watching you both from a distance. The nightmares still come sometimes, Tommy added, quietly. But they're different now. Instead of feeling helpless, I dream about the moment at the hospital. All of us standing together against Victor, stronger as a family than he ever was alone. The lake reflected the rising moon, its surface occasionally broken by leaping fish. Like those ripples in the water, their story had continued touching other lives in unexpected ways. The support group Maria had started now had chapters in 12 countries. James's foundation had helped reunite over 30 families threatened by criminal organizations. Tommy's peer counseling work had inspired similar programs in schools across Europe. Chief Muller called yesterday, James said, referring to the local police commander who'd become a friend. Victor's final appeal was denied. He'll never threaten another family, but they didn't dwell on Victor or the darkness he represented. Instead, they focused on the light they'd found in each other, in their renewed purpose, in the simple joy of being together. Maria brought out a special dessert, pistachio ice cream, handmade from her grandmother's recipe. The familiar taste carried them back to Sunday afternoons in the park, to laughter and simple pleasures that no amount of time or trauma could erase. I have something for each of you, she said, bringing out 2 small wrapped packages. Inside each was a silver locket matching the one she wore, the one James had used to help Tommy recognize him that day at the train station. Open them, she encouraged. Inside each locket was a tiny photograph. On one side, their last picture, together before James left, and on the other, a new family photo taken in their garden last week. Past and present, pain and healing, captured in silver and light. To remind us, Maria explained, her voice soft with emotion, that love doesn't break. It only transforms, becomes stronger through testing. The lullaby rose naturally then, their voices joining in the melody that had carried their hearts through separation and reunion. But now it held new harmonies, richer because of all they'd survived together. As the evening drew to a close, Tommy found himself at the garden's edge, looking up at the eternal Alps. His father joined him, then his mother, their trinity complete and unshakable. I used to shine shoes to help us survive, Tommy reflected. Now we help others thrive. From darkness to light, James agreed. From fear to hope. From broken to blessed, Maria added, holding them both close. The garden Maria had planted bloomed around them, herbs and flowers releasing their night fragrance into the cool air. Above, stars emerged one by one, each a point of light in the darkness, just as their story had become a beacon for others finding their way home to love. Inside, the china gleamed on the table, too precious to hide away any longer. The chess set waited for tomorrow's match, its pieces arranged in endless possibility. Photos of their journey, old and new, pain and joy, lined the walls in testimony to love's power to endure and transform. They were no longer the broken family from the train station, a desperate boy shining shoes, a sick mother fighting alone, a father watching from shadows. They had become something stronger, guides for others walking similar paths, proof that separation could end in reunion, that fear could be overcome by love, that even the deepest wounds could heal in the light of forgiveness and understanding. The lullaby's final notes drifted across Lake Geneva, carrying with them the promise that every ending could become a new beginning. Every sorrow could transform to strength, and every family could find its way home to love. Type believe in the comments if you know that love is stronger than fear, and subscribe to Soulful Stories for more tales of healing, hope, and the triumph of the human heart.